Today I'm going to show you how to go from amateur to pro with one single technique. It is the one thing you can do on your watercolor painting to take it from flat to amazing and, dare I say it, professional grade looking. Let's talk about underpainting, why we do it, how we do it, and how to pick the right colors for the job. Now, I know how scary this sounds. I was very intimidated when I first looked into it. It sounds very advanced watercolor knowledge, I get it. But the truth is, once you understand why we do it and how we do it, it's actually pretty easy, and it is very helpful when you create your painting because it will allow you to see the shapes you've drawn and be like a contrast guide throughout your work. So what exactly is underpainting? Underpainting in watercolors is when you start your painting by adding a first wash of color that's not necessarily the main color you'll want to use for your painting. Sometimes you won't even be able to see it in a finished painting, but it heavily influences the way that color and the following layers are going to look once you're done. So do you know when you're watching someone paint with watercolors, like a portrait or something, and they start out by painting the whole thing blue or yellow or even red, and by then you're freaking out. Why is that guy painting that face blue? But then as it progresses, you get it. That's underpainting. You can use underpainting to add shadows and depth to your painting, but it can also amplify the colors you want to shine through. So why do you need it? Why don't just add the saturated colors and take it from there? For me, the main reason is that adding layers helps add depth to your painting, whereas with just one or two layers, it will end up looking flat. It also helps with your color placement because the colors won't blend into one another, and if you make sure your base wash is nice and dry, the colors won't look muddy. Each layer you add is another opportunity for adding different values and details, which makes a world of difference when you're painting with watercolors. But if I'm honest, the reason why I love using underpainting is because it's safer. Because we paint from light to dark, and we tend to do a very light wash when we're doing our underpainting. Even if we mess up, we get other chances to correct it and make it right. If you're painting using just one or two layers, your mistakes are much harder to correct. Let's test this out. Let's paint something using underpainting versus just one or two straight layers. So we know what an apple looks like, right? But if you look at this picture, you'll see more than that. You see the colors of the apple, but you're also seeing the way the light highlights certain parts of it and how that changes the overall colors. I guess you can say there's always three things to account when you're looking at a reference photo: the real colors of the object, the changes the light provides, and the way you see it, your perspective. All of this is important information when you're about to paint with watercolors. So for the shadows, I use blue, a very light coating. And I've just realized something as I'm adding my first layer, how soft of a beginning it is. The fear of the blank page is real and often keeps us from actually starting to paint. We just go and do something else. But if all we need to do to start our painting is add a light wash of blue paint, we can do that, right? Then for the highlights for the light, I either leave it without paint or add yellow. And this is our underpainting. We need to wait for it to dry now. Now we need some orange for the details of the apple we see here, the lines, the dots. We can also start adding some red, but we're still keeping it all pretty muted. And you can definitely see the underpainting, but it's slowly turning into something else. The beauty of watercolors is the transparency and all the layers. There's really no other medium quite like it. We can now see what all of this will become, but it's like we've let it in the sun too long. It's missing its vibrancy. Time to bring on the bright red. And just look at this. How gorgeous is this? More realistic too, but I'm not really focusing on that right now. It's not my main goal. Now we just leave it to dry or make it dry one final time, and this is what we get. Ready for the quick version? So this is pretty much the same apple, except we're not adding underpainting. We just want the final colors. Let's start with the yellow. We're still doing light to dark though. And I still want to leave the same white bits, okay? They are very important. Now comes the bright red, and immediately you can see how the colors seem more detached from one another. It looks a little bit fragmented, whereas the underpainting just adds a cohesive look to it. You see where one color starts and the other ends. You see the edges of the color. And remember, this is the only chance you have to control the temperature of your painting, to add all the values, all the details, all the shadows and whatnot. This is it. If you want shadows, you need to add darker colors. If you want different values, you need to find those exact colors before you paint. Everything needs to be thought out and planned beforehand. No pressure. And before we know it, it's done. I mean, it's very cute, but if you put it side by side, you understand why the underpainting is worth it. Another big issue about underpainting is how to pick the right colors. Well, I have good news and bad news about that. First, there isn't a wrong color you can choose. Each one has a specific effect. The bad news is there really isn't a formula, so the best way to know the kind of effects you'll get with different colors is to practice a lot and find out. So after all said and done, tell me, are you ready to try underpainting? Do you think it's worth all the trouble to do it? Let me know all your thoughts and comments and tips, of course, about underpainting on the comments below. You know how much I love to hear from you. Thank you, I had a blast, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.